Something extraordinary is unfolding today, and if you have sensed an unusual tension building beneath the surface of your life, do not dismiss it as coincidence. This is not simply another date passing across the calendar. Today marks the arrival of a cosmic confrontation that has been forming piece by piece for weeks, even though countless people remain completely unaware that it has been approaching. On July 6th, the Sun, traveling through Cancer, reaches an exact square with Saturn in Aries at 14 degrees, and the instant this alignment becomes exact, life may feel as though an unseen force has abruptly halted everything that seemed to be gaining momentum. Plans that appeared stable, dreams you believed were finally taking shape, ambitions that had begun to feel attainable, and the emotional security you have quietly depended upon may suddenly face pressure unlike anything you expected. This is not an experience that asks whether you are ready. It simply arrives, demanding honesty where comfort once existed. Yet the deeper truth is even more significant, because this moment cannot be understood by looking only at today. The atmosphere became dramatically more unstable after an event that occurred 2 days earlier, creating conditions that intensified everything now unfolding. If you have recently noticed a heaviness that seems to settle into your body without explanation, if your energy feels depleted even after resting, if your chest or stomach carries a mysterious weight that refuses to disappear, there is a meaningful reason behind those sensations. Your body may already be responding to the energetic pressure long before your conscious mind understands what is happening. The explanation for that reaction becomes clear only after seeing the larger picture, because the next 48 hours carry a level of intensity unlike any other period this year. Nothing about these alignments is random. Every movement is deliberate. Every planetary interaction acts with remarkable precision, exposing the areas of life that have remained hidden beneath distraction, avoidance, or emotional habit. Before examining the challenge that arrives today, we have to return to the powerful energetic wave that was unleashed on July 4th, because that event became the catalyst for everything now standing before you. On that day, Mars formed a conjunction with Uranus in Gemini, bringing together two planetary forces that rarely express themselves quietly. Mars governs action, determination, instinct, conflict, and raw momentum. Uranus represents sudden disruption, unexpected liberation, rebellion against limitation, and dramatic change that arrives without warning. When these two forces unite, the result is not subtle transformation, but explosive acceleration. It resembles the shock of an earthquake that instantly changes familiar ground into unfamiliar territory. Under this influence, people often make decisions they never imagined making only hours before. Someone may walk away from a career that has drained them for years without looking back. Another person may send words they can never retrieve because silence has become more painful than truth. Others may choose paths that feel radical in the moment because something deep inside finally refuses to remain imprisoned. Since this conjunction occurred in Gemini, the zodiac sign connected with communication, information, thought patterns, learning, and the nervous system, its influence struck directly through the mind itself, almost like lightning, illuminating a landscape that had remained hidden in darkness. Perhaps you recognize that energy within yourself. Maybe an unexpected realization arrived with astonishing clarity. Perhaps an overwhelming desire to free yourself from a situation that had quietly limited your spirit became impossible to suppress. A single conversation may have redirected your future within moments. Some people suddenly found the courage to act after months of hesitation. Others finally spoke truths they had buried beneath fear, obligation, or guilt. Many experienced something internal giving way, as though invisible chains dissolved, emotional walls collapsed, or an outdated version of themselves simply reached its breaking point. In those moments, the energy felt exhilarating. It carried the taste of liberation, possibility, and personal freedom. It seemed as though life had finally opened a door that had remained locked for far too long. Yet the deeper design of the universe does not end with inspiration alone. Every spark that awakens movement is eventually followed by a moment that reveals whether that movement can withstand reality. The freedom ignited by Mars and Uranus was never intended to exist without examination. Instead, it prepared the stage for the challenge arriving today. That challenge appears through the exact square between the Sun and Saturn, and its purpose reaches far beyond simple difficulty. Imagine pursuing your greatest desire with complete confidence, believing every step is bringing you closer, only to encounter an invisible barrier that instantly stops your progress without warning. There is no gradual slowdown, no gentle signal asking you to reconsider. Everything simply pauses. That image reflects the nature of this transit. Saturn governs karma, discipline, limitation, responsibility, time, maturity, and undeniable truth. It is not influenced by emotional preference or personal expectation. Saturn asks only one question: what is authentic, and what merely appears stable? When Saturn forms a square to the Sun, which symbolizes identity, vitality, purpose, and the core expression of self, every aspect of life undergoes careful examination. Any shortcut taken in the past becomes visible. Every structure resting upon weak foundations begins revealing its cracks. Emotional habits repeated unconsciously, patterns maintained through comfort rather than growth, and identities preserved through avoidance rather than honesty, all come under Saturn's unwavering attention. Nothing escapes its vision, because Saturn does not ignore what has become inconvenient. Yet there is another layer that makes this transit especially significant. The Sun currently moves through Cancer, the sign associated with home, family, emotional belonging, personal history, inner protection, and the places where the heart seeks safety. Saturn stands in Aries, the sign connected with independence, courage, initiative, self-reliance, and the willingness to stand alone when necessary. These two expressions of energy naturally pull in different directions, and today they confront one another at exactly 14 degrees and 23 minutes. That precise meeting creates more than external tension. It becomes a deeply personal question placed directly before you. Are you creating your future upon authentic inner security that remains stable regardless of circumstance, or have you mistaken familiar emotional comfort for genuine strength? Have you protected yourself because your soul truly feels secure, or because fear convinced you that staying where you are is safer than becoming who you are capable of becoming? Whether those answers bring reassurance or discomfort, the universe is now removing every opportunity to avoid them, and that realization becomes the foundation for everything that unfolds next. Have you noticed how every attempt to gain momentum recently seems to lose strength before it reaches its destination? Perhaps you begin the day determined to make progress, only to discover that every decision demands more effort than expected. Every opportunity arrives with another complication, and every step forward somehow feels heavier than the one before it. That experience is not simply frustration or unfortunate timing. It reflects a much larger astrological pattern that has been developing steadily beneath the surface. While many people are quick to attribute periods like this entirely to Mercury retrograde, and Mercury has indeed been retrograde in Cancer since June 29th, encouraging unresolved conversations, forgotten memories unfinished, emotional business, and patterns from the past to rise once again. There is another influence, creating the particular sensation of moving without truly advancing. The feeling of pressing harder while remaining almost exactly where you started belongs to Saturn traveling through Aries, and this pressure has not appeared overnight. It has been quietly increasing for weeks, preparing this very moment. Astrologers describe Saturn in Aries as a planet existing in its fall, meaning that Saturn expresses itself through a sign whose natural instincts challenge nearly everything Saturn represents. Saturn teaches patience, endurance, careful planning, responsibility, and the willingness to earn lasting results through discipline. Aries, by contrast, thrives on immediate action, bold initiative, courage without hesitation, and the desire to move before doubt has the chance to appear. Saturn believes time itself is a teacher. Aries believes hesitation steals opportunity. Saturn carefully constructs each step before moving ahead. Aries wants to leap first and solve problems afterward. One insists upon restraint, while the other demands immediate movement. When these opposing forces occupy the same stage, the result becomes an exhausting internal contradiction. It resembles driving with every intention of accelerating, while an unseen force keeps pressing firmly against the brakes. Your heart longs to move. Your spirit urges you toward change. Yet every attempt encounters another responsibility, another delay, another circumstance, requiring patience instead of speed. You may begin questioning yourself, wondering why confidence suddenly turns into hesitation, or why your motivation repeatedly collides with invisible resistance. Yet this experience reaches far beyond your personal circumstances. If you have found yourself caught between a powerful desire for independence and the obligations that seem impossible to escape, if you feel called toward courageous action while simultaneously fearing the consequences of every important choice, you are participating in a collective experience unfolding across the entire planet. This cosmic tension has reached a level rarely experienced in recent years, and although it feels uncomfortable, its purpose extends beyond limitation. The friction itself serves a meaningful function. Pressure is not always designed to prevent growth. Sometimes it exists to strengthen whatever will eventually carry greater responsibility. Saturn is not attempting to deny your future. Instead, it is reinforcing the parts of you that must become stable before the next chapter can truly support itself. Once that realization begins settling into your awareness, another, even more intimate layer of today's alignment reveals itself, and this is the place where many people instinctively look away because it touches emotional territory that has remained hidden for years. The Sun moving through Cancer symbolizes much more than personal identity or external goals. Cancer answers to the Moon, and through that relationship, it becomes deeply connected with the emotional environment that shaped your earliest experiences. It reflects the influence of the mother, childhood attachment, family bonds, emotional nourishment, and the place where your understanding of safety first developed, whether that foundation was built with security or fractured by uncertainty. Because Mercury has also been retrograde in Cancer since June 29th, the past is no longer waiting politely outside your awareness. It has already entered your inner world. Memories that seemed long forgotten begin returning with surprising clarity. Conversations you believed had reached their conclusion replay themselves from entirely new perspectives. Individuals connected to earlier chapters of your life, relatives, childhood companions, former relationships, or anyone who left a lasting emotional imprint may suddenly return through direct contact or simply through the feelings they awakened long ago. Then today's exact square from Saturn in Aries arrives and asks a question that cannot easily be ignored. How much of the person you have become reflects your own authentic identity, and how much continues to operate according to emotional patterns inherited from your family history? This reaches into what astrologers often describe as the activation of the mother wound, those subtle emotional programs surrounding comfort, nurturing, protection, acceptance, and belonging that formed during the earliest stages of life. These patterns often remain invisible because they become so familiar that they feel like personality rather than conditioning. They influence how you search for emotional safety, how you respond to conflict, how easily you trust others, and why you sometimes remain attached to situations that stopped supporting your growth long ago simply because they still feel familiar. Saturn does not expose these hidden foundations as punishment. Saturn reveals them because no lasting future can be constructed upon emotional structures that were never consciously chosen. Before something stronger can be created, The original foundation must first become visible. That is why today's energy may feel deeply personal. If unexpected emotions have begun rising without obvious explanation, if thoughts repeatedly return to childhood experiences, your parents, early family dynamics, or moments that shaped your understanding of love and security, none of those experiences are appearing randomly. The transit is performing exactly the work it was designed to perform. It is pulling hidden roots toward the surface, so you can finally recognize what has quietly anchored your life for years without your awareness. Your body often recognizes these energetic shifts before your conscious mind has language to explain them. And that is why the physical sensations many people are experiencing right now deserve attention rather than dismissal. Earlier, I mentioned there was a specific reason your body seemed to be reacting differently, and this is where everything connects. The sun governs vitality, life force, the heart, the spine, and the energy that sustains your sense of purpose. Saturn governs the bones, the joints, the skin, and the structural framework supporting the entire body. Cancer is associated with the stomach, digestion, nourishment, and the lymphatic system. Aries corresponds with the head, the adrenal glands, and the instinctive fight-or-flight response that activates whenever life feels threatening. When these planetary influences meet through a challenging square, their interaction extends beyond emotional symbolism and often expresses itself physically. Many people may notice sensations that seem difficult to explain through ordinary circumstances alone. Perhaps exhaustion settles so deeply that even a full night of sleep brings little relief. Perhaps digestion suddenly feels unsettled through bloating, nausea, acid reflux, or an uncomfortable tightness in the stomach that seems to appear whenever emotions remain unspoken. These physical experiences may feel confusing at first, yet they mirror the deeper emotional restructuring taking place beneath the surface, revealing that both your inner world and your body are responding to the same powerful cosmic process now unfolding. Before you dismiss what your body has been trying to tell you, pay attention to the signals that refuse to disappear. Perhaps your skin has suddenly become more reactive than usual. Maybe an old ache in your joints has returned after months of silence. Or you wake each morning feeling as though your body has already endured an exhausting journey before the day has even begun. These experiences are not meaningless interruptions. They are messages emerging from the deepest level of your physical awareness. Your body has no interest in maintaining comforting illusions. It communicates only through truth, and at this moment, it may be revealing something your conscious mind has been working tirelessly to avoid. The emotional burden you have carried for so long has reached a point where your current way of managing it can no longer continue without consequences. Aries fills you with an instinct to keep fighting, to overcome every obstacle through determination alone, to believe that enough effort can solve anything standing in your path. Cancer speaks a completely different language. It longs for restoration, emotional protection, quiet, nourishment, and the experience of feeling genuinely supported. Yet Saturn now stands between these two powerful impulses, refusing to allow either one complete expression. Instead, it creates an internal state where movement feels restricted while rest feels impossible. Your nervous system becomes suspended between action and surrender, producing an unsettling sensation that resembles emotional paralysis. That uncomfortable stillness is not evidence that you are failing. It is evidence that your inner structure is demanding a different response. There is something your body requires from you now, and treating it as optional would only deepen the strain already building beneath the surface. Genuine restoration is necessary. Not distraction disguised as recovery, not endless scrolling while exhaustion quietly accumulates beneath the noise, but authentic rest through sleep, hydration, silence, and the willingness to step away from constant stimulation. This kind of restoration feels unfamiliar because it resembles surrender more than productivity. Yet surrender is precisely what this moment is asking of you. Your physical body is establishing boundaries that your thoughts have repeatedly ignored. If you refuse to honor those limits voluntarily, life itself may eventually create circumstances that leave you with no choice but to stop. This is why listening now carries far less cost than resisting, until the pressure becomes overwhelming. Yet even after this profound confrontation between momentum and limitation, the sky has prepared another chapter, one that transforms the emotional landscape in an entirely different way. On July 7th, only one day after the exact square between the Sun and Saturn, Neptune stations retrograde in Aries. Neptune governs dreams, illusion, spirituality, imagination, transcendence, and everything that dissolves the rigid borders separating certainty from mystery. Whenever Neptune pauses before reversing direction, its influence intensifies dramatically, almost as though the planet takes a long breath and releases its essence into the collective atmosphere. What follows can feel like a dense fog, gradually settling across familiar ground, making once obvious landmarks surprisingly difficult to recognize. When the sequence of these recent alignments is viewed together, an extraordinary pattern begins to emerge. On July 4th, Mars joined Uranus in Gemini, igniting a powerful desire for liberation, courage, unexpected breakthroughs, and revolutionary action. On July 6th, the exact square from Saturn interrupted that momentum, demanding accountability, realism, and structural honesty before allowing further progress. Then, on July 7th, Neptune introduces an entirely different experience. After the storm comes the mist. Sharp certainty softens into uncertainty. What once appeared obvious becomes mysterious. The emotional landscape changes from direct confrontation into quiet introspection. If Saturn challenged your assumptions by revealing what could no longer support itself, Neptune asks an even deeper question. What if the reality you believed was solid had already been shaped by illusion long before Saturn exposed its weakness? This becomes another examination of identity, but from an entirely different perspective. The structures that appeared unstable under Saturn's scrutiny may also reveal that they were supported by unrealistic expectations, spiritual avoidance, comforting fantasies, misplaced optimism, or dreams that never developed genuine roots in practical reality. The uncompromising clarity delivered by July 6th gradually transforms into the reflective uncertainty of July 7th, creating an atmosphere that may feel confusing while simultaneously opening profound spiritual insight. Saturn first challenges the confidence of the ego. Neptune then dissolves the remaining attachment to certainty itself. After both influences complete their work, only what possesses authentic substance continues standing. Everything else slowly fades away. During this phase, attempting to force immediate answers may only increase frustration because the absence of clarity serves an important purpose. When visibility disappears, deeper intuition often begins to awaken. Sometimes, losing sight of familiar direction becomes the only way to discover the destination your soul has quietly been moving toward all along. The unfolding story continues because July 7th also brings the last quarter moon in Aries, and this lunar phase carries extraordinary significance. Every last quarter moon represents a decisive turning point within the lunar cycle. It is not defined by catastrophe, but by necessary choice. It is the stage where release becomes essential for future growth. Whatever has already weakened under previous influences now reaches the moment where separation can no longer be postponed. The energy resembles cosmic shears, completing what earlier pressure had already fractured. Because this last quarter moon occurs in Aries, while closely engaging the same degrees recently activated by Saturn, the emotional implications become impossible to keep at an intellectual distance. This is no longer merely an idea for your mind to analyze. It becomes something your entire emotional body experiences directly. You may recognize the truth through a sensation in your chest, an unmistakable feeling within your stomach, or a quiet inner knowing that appears before logic has the opportunity to argue against it. Projects that have exhausted their purpose, relationships whose natural season has ended, emotional habits once mistaken for protection but now functioning as invisible prisons, all rise unmistakably into awareness. This lunar phase does not encourage endless reflection about whether change might someday become appropriate. Instead, it calls for immediate alignment between your actions and your deepest integrity. Comfort alone no longer qualifies as a sufficient reason to remain where growth has already stopped. Yet even this remarkable sequence does not conclude the lesson now unfolding. What began on July 6th extends far beyond a single day, because Saturn's work is never limited to one brief encounter. Saturn is gradually reducing its forward motion across the heavens, preparing to station retrograde on July 26th at almost precisely the same point, 14 degrees and 45 minutes of Aries. This means the planet remains concentrated around this sensitive degree throughout the month, continually emphasizing the very themes first illuminated by the exact square. Rather than delivering one isolated challenge before disappearing, Saturn remains present, encouraging repeated reflection, deeper accountability, and ongoing refinement. The reality revealed now is only the beginning of a much longer process. One that will continue asking whether every decision, every foundation, and every expression of your identity possesses the strength to endure once every illusion has finally fallen away. What you are carrying today does not simply disappear when the calendar turns to tomorrow. The weight introduced by this alignment is designed to remain with you because its purpose is not to create a passing emotional reaction. It is meant to become a living conversation between you and your own choices. Saturn does not deliver a lesson and immediately walk away. It remains present, observing how you respond to every realization it has placed before you. As Saturn continues slowing its motion and prepares to station retrograde on July 26th at 14 degrees and 45 minutes of Aries, a far more significant chapter begins. That retrograde marks the beginning of an approximately 5-month period extending into December, during which every area of life touched by the Sun-Saturn square on July 6th returns for deeper examination. Nothing revealed during this moment simply fades into the background. Every decision, every emotional pattern, every relationship, every ambition, and every foundation exposed under Saturn's light will be revisited repeatedly. Whatever has been built through patience, genuine responsibility, authentic commitment, and emotional honesty will gradually become stronger because Saturn always rewards structures capable of supporting lasting growth. Yet anything created through avoidance, appearances, convenient shortcuts, emotional denial, or the habit of pretending problems did not exist will begin to separate under increasing pressure. This process is not an act of punishment. The universe is not removing what matters. It is removing only what cannot continue into the future without eventually collapsing under its own instability. Saturn never invents weaknesses that were absent before. Instead, it illuminates the fractures that have quietly existed beneath the surface until they become impossible to ignore. Once those cracks become visible, you are finally given the opportunity to rebuild upon something far more enduring. Although the emotional intensity of this period may seem overwhelming, there is an extraordinary reason these challenges are arriving now, an understanding that larger picture changes everything. The respected French astrologer Henri Balbal devoted much of his life to studying long-term planetary cycles and accurately anticipated several of the most important global developments of the previous century. Looking toward the second half of July 2026, he described the planetary configuration forming during that period as the most beautiful alignment of the 21st century. The outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter, and Saturn gradually arranged themselves into an exceptionally rare geometric structure filled with harmonious sextiles and trines, creating a pattern that has not appeared for generations. Astrologically, such an alignment symbolizes far more than individual opportunity. It represents the possibility of collective renewal, profound technological innovation, extraordinary creative expansion, cultural transformation, and an opening of the human heart that reshapes the way people relate to one another and to the world itself. Yet experienced astrologers also understand another truth that is often overlooked. Extraordinary harmony requires individuals who have become capable of holding it. Powerful energy cannot safely enter structures that remain unstable. This is precisely why the Sun-Saturn square on July 6th carries such significance. It serves as the threshold, standing before everything that follows. It functions like a forge where excessive pride, emotional dependency, impulsive behavior, fragile confidence, and unstable foundations are gradually burned away until only what possesses genuine strength remains. Then, on July 29th, the full moon in Aquarius activates this remarkable planetary geometry. Its light reaches Pluto while energizing the entire harmonious configuration that has been patiently assembling throughout the month. For those willing to meet Saturn's challenge with honesty, accepting uncomfortable truths instead of escaping them, that full moon may feel like entering an entirely different chapter of life. The transformation does not occur because the sky grants miraculous rewards without effort. It becomes possible because the difficult inner work has already been completed before the opportunity arrives. Every meaningful beginning asks for something in return, and this has always been the agreement written into the language of growth. Knowing all of this naturally raises an important question. How do you move wisely through a period where your foundations are being examined, your emotions stirred by the past, your physical energy tested, and your maturity quietly challenged all at once? The first answer is surprisingly simple, even though it may be the hardest to practice. Stop running. Whatever truth you have postponed acknowledging, whatever conversation continues waiting because it feels uncomfortable, whatever reality has been hidden beneath carefully constructed explanations, excuses, or distractions, allow yourself to face it directly. Saturn does not strengthen avoidance. Saturn strengthens courage, expressed through responsibility. It consistently supports those willing to turn toward the very experience they most wish to escape. Equally important is the way you care for your body during this period. Restoration is no longer a luxury reserved for moments after success. It becomes an essential strategy for navigating the enormous energetic demands now unfolding. Continuing to push beyond exhaustion does not demonstrate resilience. It often reflects the inability to recognize genuine limits. Give yourself permission to sleep longer than your habits normally allow. Drink more water than seems necessary. Create moments where your nervous system can finally release the constant expectation of struggle. Your body is not working against you. It is attempting to guide you towards sustainable strength. Alongside physical restoration comes an even deeper invitation. Become radically honest with yourself. Not the comfortable honesty that briefly acknowledges weakness before immediately searching for reassurance, but the kind that quietly examines every important area of your life without defensiveness. Ask yourself what truly functions well and what has quietly stopped serving your future long ago. Notice which situations continue only because change has felt frightening. Observe which emotional patterns have remained familiar despite repeatedly producing the same disappointing outcomes. This level of honesty may feel uncomfortable, yet it creates the very freedom that avoidance has always promised, but never delivered. As you continue moving through this process, trust that the uncertainty surrounding you is temporary. The fog introduced by Neptune will eventually clear. The pressure created by Saturn will gradually soften. Even the unexplained heaviness resting within your chest begins dissolving once you stop resisting its message and begin understanding what it has been trying to communicate from the beginning. Saturn has never existed as an enemy determined to make life more difficult. It behaves more like the uncompromising teacher who values your growth enough to speak truth even when everyone else prefers offering comfortable reassurance. By the time this chapter concludes, you may discover that the person emerging from it hardly resembles the individual who first entered it. Something much larger than ordinary daily experience is unfolding now. Beyond planetary positions, beyond degrees and aspects, a deeper transformation is taking place within the fabric of your identity itself. Yes, moments of this week may feel intensely demanding. There may be times when the universe seems to press upon every part of your life simultaneously, leaving you wondering whether your strength will be enough. Yet the remarkable truth is that the version of you standing beyond these experiences carries a completely different relationship with fear. The anxieties that once controlled your decisions gradually lose their influence. Emotional cycles that repeatedly led you through the same disappointments begin dissolving. Protective walls built over years of disappointment no longer appear necessary because you recognize that they have been preventing love, trust, connection, and authentic growth from entering your life as much as they prevented pain. What unfolds now should never be mistaken for an ending. It marks the beginning of something far more meaningful. The universe is not placing obstacles before you to prove your weakness. It is presenting opportunities for you to discover your own capacity to create a life grounded in authenticity, endurance, and emotional truth. The Sun-Saturn square never pauses to ask whether you are prepared because, at the deepest level of your being, it already assumes you possess everything required to meet this moment. Beneath the fatigue, beneath the uncertainty, beneath the emotional heaviness that has accompanied this week, there is already a quiet part of you that recognizes this challenge as necessary. Today, the long-awaited reality check arrives. Do not turn away from it. Do not silence it through distraction. Do not hurry past it in search of easier answers. Stand fully within its presence and allow it to reveal every place where change has quietly been waiting. Then choose to become an active participant in that transformation. Those who embrace this moment with honesty, courage, humility, and the willingness to remain uncomfortable long enough for genuine growth will reach the closing days of July and recognize that their lives have shifted in ways they could scarcely have imagined. The stars do not complete that transformation on anyone's behalf. They simply illuminate the path. The true change belongs to those who accept the invitation, do the difficult inner work, and finally become the person the heavens have been preparing them to be all along. If you have stayed with me until this moment, thank you for sharing your time and attention. If this message resonated with you and you would like to continue exploring these extraordinary astrological journeys together, I warmly invite you to subscribe. Your support allows this community to keep growing. I would also love to hear your own experiences and reflections, so feel free to leave them in the comments below. Until we meet again, take good care of yourself, stay open to the lessons unfolding around you, and join us again for more meaningful insights into the wisdom written across the sky.